We've got a great, did I mention great panel in front of us right now. To your left, Laura Holliday, Chief Marketing Officer of Zola. And Laura will describe what Zola is and why she's so excited about it. To her left, David Gluick, who is the VP of Data Science and Engineering at Bonobos. And to his left, we have Dana Hork, who's the Director of Membership at Jet. So hello, panel, and welcome. We are going to talk today about customer experience, and hopefully we will learn a couple of things about some best practices around customer experience from these three great practitioners, both in terms of execution, as well as in measurement, as well as insights, learning unintuitive things, things they didn't expect they would be measuring when they were thinking about customer experience, what have you. So, with that in mind, oh, by the way, really interesting combination of experience on the panel here as well. So you're looking at the collective wisdom of people who have worked for Netflix and Groupon and J.Crew and Williams-Sonoma and Ralph Lauren. In addition to, we have founders on stage as well. So do want you to try and take good notes because this is a really great group and I'm really pleased to have them here today. So with that said, ladies and gentlemen, what I'd like to do is I'd like to first ask you a question of defining customer experience. What does the customer experience mean for your respective companies? And maybe I'll start with Laura and work your way left.
So Zola is a really small company still. We're only 35 people. And it's an online wedding registry that's disrupting the wedding industry. So if you're engaged or know anyone who is, tell them to register on Zola. That's my pitch. And so we're so small that customer experience is not a part of anyone's job. It's not a team. It's everybody. Like everyone's primary job when they come into work every day is to enhance the customer experience. From tech to customer service to marketing, we think about it relentlessly.
David, how about you?
Yeah, so at Bonobos, we're a apparel retailer, primarily menswear, started online. And I actually have a pretty similar answer when I thought when I was looking at this question. I was trying to think of who at the company doesn't focus on customer experience, because really it's everybody. I mean, obviously there's the web experience, which is what a lot of people traditionally think about. There's marketing in terms of how you tell the brand story. There's the guide shops or physical stores where you're building a very personalized, in-person experience. So there's customer service where people are actually dealing with customers one-on-one. So it's hard to think of an area that really doesn't focus on the customer, and that's really part of who we are as a company is being centered around the customer and thinking about that in pretty much all aspects.
Sure. So I apologize, I'm getting over a little cold. But I work at Jet.com, and for those of you that haven't tried out the site, we're an online shopping membership club offering savings on millions of items, everything from TV to toilet paper. And when you shop smart and build bigger baskets, you can unlock bigger savings. On the site, we have free shipping, free returns, and customer service based out of Salt Lake City. And so for us, we have customer experience for us is really not only customer experience, but member experience. So we're a membership. Our base membership right now is free, but we think of ourselves very much as a community and a membership, something that people belong to, a like-minded group of consumers who are looking to unlock savings that they deserve when shopping becomes more efficient. And so for us, customer experience and member experience really spans everything from that first touch point when you see our advertising or you see us on a bus, all the way through to our web and mobile app experience, to when you call and talk to our customer service team, which we call the Jet Heads, what that experience is like, hold music, the greeting that you get, all the way through to the box experience, both from our warehouses as well as our third party, our retail partners. And so for us, customer experience is that entire journey through, and all of us are really stakeholders in that process, whether we're actioning and bringing touch points to life, or those of us that measure it, or those of us that talk directly to customers. We're all really stakeholders in that experience.
That's interesting data. So when you think about in terms of owning or at least managing that entire supply chain from first touch point all the way through,
Sure.
What are the guardrails, when you were thinking about, or I would say when Jet was first getting started,
Yeah.
because I don't know if you don't necessarily own every single piece of it. Some of those pieces you need to rent, so to speak.
Sure.
What is it, how do you instill the kind of customer experience, what your expectations are around customer experience and the partners that you have to work with to make all of those pieces come into line?
Sure. I mean, it starts with having, defining for ourselves a center of gravity and what matters to us, and sort of, an equation that we think about is really, nailing the fundamentals. We're an e-commerce experience, and we've got to nail the fundamentals of that, and that's an important part of a customer experience. To building a savings experience that matters, right? If there's this phrase, I'm a former founder, and there's this phrase that if you're not 10% better on something, you're sort of irrelevant. And making sure that our savings experience really is meaningfully better than alternatives out there, something that's really important to us, and customers need to see that, feel that, and be able to experience real savings. And then something that's critical to everything we do is really nailing the brand experience and making sure that we're building a brand that's building an emotional connection with our consumers. It's something that people find joy in. It's something that they can connect to. It's something that puts a smile, or as we say from our logo, a wink on their face. And so starting with that center of gravity of what's important for us to build is really important. And then as we work with our retail partners or other vendors in the experience, whatever it may be, it's important that they share kind of those values so that end to end, our customers, when they're shopping with Jet, no matter who's fulfilling their order, they're having an incredible experience. And just one thing I want to tack on to that, we made a very important strategic decision. We have a centralized customer service team called the Jet Heads, and that's a single point of contact for our consumers. So no matter who's fulfilling their order, where it's coming from in our retail network, that's a single point of contact. And so that a central shipping and returns policy, all of those things are meant to make sure there's a consistent experience throughout.
So Laura, your experience is a little bit different in terms of how you have to operate in terms of it being a wedding registry. Can you talk about customer experience where the thinking about customer experience never ends, but there are certain handoffs that you have to make between the partners that you work with as well? Can you get into what that looks like internally?
Sure. So I think what you're alluding to is the fact that Zola is primarily a drop ship business. So we're a retailer the same way Macy's is a retailer, and we sell Cuisinart and Calphalon and all of those mainstay registry brands. But unlike the big department stores, we don't actually take inventory. We drop ship directly to the consumer from our vendors, and that's what gives us the ability actually to let our couples decide when things ship to them instead of just getting boxes to the door as people buy them gifts. So it's a great value to our consumer, and they love it. But it does mean that there's a point where they're getting a box that did not come from Zola. And just like Jet, we have the decision that it is a centralized customer service experience. So whether it shipped, from Calphalon and never came to us, or whether they added something in from Williams-Sonoma, we will deal with that and take care of it directly. Just for the exact same reasons, like you can't ever tell a customer, oh, sorry, we don't know, that's not our fault, like go call someone else, like that's not acceptable.
And on to that point, so that starts to speak to the idea of measuring customer experience, and what are all the different levers that all of you can pull. David, I'll speak to the data science head in you in terms of how Bonobos measures customer experience today, and what are the different facets that you take into consideration, both in terms of existing customers, as well as you think about new physical presence locations. What are the measurement programs you have in place to think about bringing those to life?
Right. So the main thing that we want to measure the customer experience with is customer lifetime value. That's really what we're going after, which is nice if you can boil it all down to a simple metric. The problem with that is it's really difficult to measure. You either have to wait so long to measure it that by the time you find out it's too late to do anything about it, or you use really complicated predictive models to figure out what it is, but then those models require a bunch of assumptions, and then you're not sure if those assumptions are really true, or if they were true, if they remain true. So that doesn't become a real practical way of doing things. So then what we do is we fall back on a series of proxy metrics, or things that we know have a really strong relationship with customer lifetime value. And so that's when it gets interesting. Things like on the website, things like average order value, purchase frequency, conversion rates. Those are really important. Same in the store, how much people are buying, how often people are buying. In terms of engagement, how often they're coming to the site, an email, how often they're clicking or purchasing from the email. Open rate turns out to be not a very useful metric. That's one that doesn't have a real strong relationship, so I tend to treat that one with a grain of salt. And so all of those metrics are kind of part of, they're all towards a common goal, but they're all hints that tell us if we're making progress towards it. And then really we go after controlled experiments whenever possible, because when we're trying to build new features or new shipping policies or return policies, the only way to really tell the true effect of that or get as close as possible to a real causal relationship is through controlled experiments. So we try to depend on that as much as possible, and in the absence of that, then we can fall back on some other methods. The physical stores have been a great example because we can't do a controlled experiment where we open a store in Seattle and then don't open a store in Seattle at the same time. So we have to do some clever things where we look at comp markets and try to see what the effect is over time, doing kind of difference in difference analyses and things like that. So that's when we get into more kind of statistical methods. Anyway, so we kind of fall back on all these different methods, go with the ones that are the most reliable ones, and then when those aren't available, we fall back to the other ones. And then through that, hopefully, we're able to get valuable learnings that we can build into our experience.
And Laura, you mentioned in our prep call that NPS plays an important role in how you're measuring customer experience. Can you talk about what you've discovered in terms of either the intuitive or non-intuitive insights that have come through measuring the customer experience?
Yep. So NPS obviously is important to every company, but for a wedding registry where you're essentially inviting 150 of your closest friends to view the product, there's an even more intense relationship in terms of whether or not you're recommending it or not. And generally people who have a bad experience, then that gets around as well. So I think what's really interesting is we are hyper-focused on NPS. We look at it every month and share it with the entire team. And we look at the detractors, and we really stalk them. I'm talking like we're LinkedIn profiling these people, we're looking at their Facebook, we're getting any information we can about them, and then we're categorizing them into groups. So now I know that if a 22-year-old girl in Wyoming registers on Zola, she's not gonna have a good experience. That's not our core customer. So as a result, we've actually shifted the way we do marketing to be very geo-targeted because we know that our promoters are in those urban areas.
And Dana, we talked a little bit too in terms of customer experience. There was a time at which there was a membership fee for Jet, and that recently was no longer a membership fee or a requirement to be a member. What was the decision around that? Was that customer driven? Was it price sensitivity? Was it putting those dollars back into the wallet of the potential customer? Sure. What was the decision making around that?
Sure. So this was something that was customer driven for sure, as well as something that really benefits not only our customers but our retail partners. What we saw, I mentioned briefly in my opening comments about what the real differentiator is for Jet around this smart cart technology and our algorithm. But what we saw was that through data, that our engagement with the smart cart feature was much, much higher than we had expected. Consumers were really taking advantage of this opportunity to build bigger carts, looking at AOV, average units per order, all of those metrics. We were seeing that this smart cart kind of feature was really driving people to build bigger baskets and unlock more savings. And when we talked to customers, what we learned is that feature alone was something that was really attractive to them. And if we were able to offer that to consumers without the membership fee, it would enable us to kind of bring that to more and more people. And so by eliminating the membership fee, what it enables us to do is, like I said, unlock this feature on the platform to even more people, and to continue to give our retail partners an opportunity to win the right orders that they want to win, so that they're unlocking efficiencies too in the supply chain. So it was really a win-win from all perspectives. We were quite pleased with what customers and our retail partners were telling us after the fact. So we feel really good about the move.
That's great. David, the decision to open a store where Bonobos historically had not been a store-driven opportunity. That opens up a whole set of new customer experience challenges. Can you talk about A, the decision to do the store, and then B, okay, what is the in-store measurement that you have to put in place in terms of thinking about what customer experience is like from a store versus what traditionally has either been the catalog or the online experience?
Well, as far as how the guide shop started, it was sort of by accident. We just started by having a little place in the headquarters office where people could try things on, and it turned out to be really popular, and it turned out to a point where we were doing so much business through there, we figured out, hey, this is a good idea. We should turn this into something, and so started opening more and more stores, and now we have 20 of them around the country. As far as it opens up a whole new world in terms of the customer experience. It's a great kind of laboratory, but the way I see it is it's more of an extension of the e-commerce experience as opposed to an entirely different one. In a way, when you think about going to a guide shop, we're not holding physical inventory there. You still place an order on the website, so all of the logistics and inventory side of it are taken out of the equation. And so all it is really the experience of trying on the clothes and the ability to actually physically see them, find the fit, talk to a guide who can help you figure out what style you're looking for and all of that, which, when you think about it, is the exact same problem we're trying to solve on the website with personalization. So it's actually the perfect personalization model where, instead of either data collection is done by a person that's actually asking you questions, the algorithm is someone's head who's actually just saying, oh, I think you'd like this. So it shows that model works really well. Now, so what I see it as is almost a model where it's showing us this is what's working. The numbers prove it in terms of average order value, lower return rates, in terms of higher customer loyalty over time. And so that proves this works, that something is working here. And now our challenge is how do we build that into a virtual world so where we can scale it even faster.
And to that point, are you trying to take I'll say the human-driven algorithm, so just like Neil's opening discussion, Neil Capel's opening discussion about his greengrocer dad, are you essentially constructing machine learning models or thinking about constructing machine learning models based on that human experience that you wouldn't necessarily find through the website?
Yeah, I'm hoping we can figure out a way to kind of blend the two together. I mean, there's obviously things you can do with machine learning alone, but those things are enhanced when you have the input of knowledgeable people that can either, whether it's through kind of classifying the products, with more qualitative tagging that describes the style, which is really what we're going after. Product recommendations are kind of trivial, but if you can do real style recommendations, that's really getting to the kind of psychographic profile of the user, that's much better. But that takes people that are knowledgeable, people like the guides. And there's also an opportunity to do a little bit of, have humans have input into that process where you can have them help train and score the models. And that's very valuable kind of domain knowledge that if we can figure out how to leverage that, being that now we've got this whole workforce of people that are out there talking to customers every day and learning, then we can build something a lot more powerful than we could just with machine learning on its own.
That's pretty interesting. So I mean, we've heard a lot about is it man versus machine or woman versus machine, and the fact and the reality is that it tends to work best when both are working simultaneously. It's a great book if you haven't read it. That was out last year called The Second Machine Age, about this idea that humans working with machines are better than machines on their own versus humans on their own try to solve these problems. So it was written by Eric Brynjolfs and Andrew McAfee from MIT. So if you're thinking about, or if any of you in your organizations are thinking about this notion of data science, how do I apply machine learning to a human practice, it's a really good book to provide some framework for that. So I want to also talk a little bit about some of the surprising discoveries. So Laura, you mentioned that women in their 20s, or who's 21, who now you have her LinkedIn profile and her Twitter handle and her Snapchat and her Instagram and whatnot, that was not a good target for you. What are some? I'd love to hear the stories, because we all hear about, okay, you know what, open rate turns out to be not a great metric. What are some of the other maybe classically driven, we think that this metric is going to be perfect for us, but then it turns out to be not perfect at all? I'd love to hear some other stories of, we thought that, or we had a hypothesis that X would be true, but then when we fielded it in market, we actually found that Y was true, or X was false.
So Zola, you can add products just like at a store, and also experiences like wine tasting classes, and then cash funds. So you can create a honeymoon fund or a house down payment fund. And because Zola makes its money off the margin from product, we're able to offer the cash funds at essentially just we break even. We charge the credit card processing fee and no other fees. Whereas all the honey fund, other sites out there have to charge a fee on the cash because that's their whole business model. And we thought that that would be a great acquisition tool, lowest cash fee, amazing, and even if you only create a cash fund where you're not profitable for us, those 150 people that come to the registry, some of them will wind up being profitable. And that actually turned out not to be true the way we thought it was. First of all, people still complain about the fee. It's one of the main things for detractors that we have this fee. So I guess that they would rather we lose money on them. And also, because of the whole birds of a feather phenomenon, people who have cash funds solely on their registry, the people, we call them the parent-child, the children, the guests of their wedding who then wind up registering on Zola later, they're also just cash. So that was like a hypothesis that we realized wasn't holding, and that went back actually to just like that targeting situation. So we just need to target the people who are more likely to add product along with cash and experiences.
Dana, how about you?
Sure. So I think
Why the choice of the color purple, for example?
you what?
Why the choice of the color purple for
That was more of a creative decision, I think, than an analytical one. I think in the case of purple, this is actually interesting. It was something that felt more ownable. There weren't a lot of people that owned the color purple. It actually renders reasonably poorly on a lot of different devices. People have their computers open, and on some PCs it looks a little blue, and then on some Macs it's more purple. But aside from rendering, people actually really responded to it. It felt really ownable, and I think consistent with the idea that, like I said, we're building a membership and hopefully sort of a movement of people that want to shop a different way, and purple sort of feels like an ownable kind of thematic color, this sort of part of a movement. We sort of joke it's like Jet Nation. We sort of surprise members sometimes with gear and swag and stickers and T-shirts, and it's just something that's recognizable and ownable, and I think one of the good kind of cornerstones of building a community. So we liked it for that reason. And then to answer your question about surprises, I think one thing, this is more of a measurement surprise than anything. So we started, as I've talked a lot about customer service, but just because it's a really important part of our customer and member experience, we started sending out a survey after every interaction with a recognized member afterwards, saying, how was this experience for you? And we sort of talked about it, and we thought, is this something that's off-putting? They could have just had a bad experience. You never quite know. Do you really want to insert another point of measurement in a customer experience? What we found was actually that the response rate is like 45–50% for us, whereas industry averages are low, like 10–15%. And so, and we think that that's part of the reason is because of actually how we've executed it. We put a picture of the jet head there so they can see, who the person was that they interacted with. And part of the recognition and reward system that we put in place is that if you want to sort of give the jet head that you just spoke to some cred, right, and give them, say, a drink or some jet gear, they actually turn that into rewards and incentives for the jet heads. And so it's improved response rates for us. It's created a more personalized experience out of something that otherwise could have just been sort of a ho-hum measurement part of the experience. So I think we were surprised about how consumers and our members really responded to that touch point, and it enables us to deliver a better service experience when we're getting more feedback about how the interaction went. So it's really a win-win.
It reminds me of my favorite sushi chef in my neighborhood. He will give you the opportunity as a buyer to buy the entire staff a round of beer.
Yeah.
So you have the ability to transform his customer experience as much as you have the ability to transform your own. David, other insights, because of course you're deep in data science. Well, wide and deep, I suppose. So I'd love to hear again a couple of other interesting things that you've discovered along the way. You've been there now for 3 years. The stores, you said, kind of happened by accident. What are some of the more deliberate decisions that data science helped inform along the way?
Well, one of the surprising things was when we were working on email targeting. So we tend to have a set of featured emails that we send out each week that are around big events, either sales that we're running or featured new products that we just launched, or other featured products that we want to emphasize to customers. And so part of my team took on the task of trying to get smarter about how we target those emails, about who we send those to. We were sending them pretty broadly to a lot of people. We wanted to see if, hey, can we get smarter about predicting who's likely to actually respond to this email, and then send to a smaller group of people and then that way we wouldn't be blasting everybody all the time, and we have a little more bandwidth to send other more personalized emails or messaging too. So I was expecting, it wasn't surprising that it worked to a certain degree. I was expecting to be able to maybe reduce sends by 20 or 30%. But what we found was actually we could reduce sends by more like 70 to 80% and still get almost the same amount of revenue, or pretty close in the 90 something percent revenue, which meant that basically we were sending out most of our emails were pretty much we were wasting our breath on, which was a big surprise to me that it would be that big of a volume, which is great because that means we can send a lot less, get nearly the same amount of revenue, and then we have 80% of our subscriber base to figure out something better to message them, either through a different platform, whether it's on social or through our catalogs, or just a better content on the email itself. So I was surprised by how well that worked, or how big that difference was. And then another one on the website, we were doing a lot of testing around promotion strategies, trying to figure out, how big of an offer do we need to give people to get them to transact, or do we need to give them an offer at all? Or, how much are we giving people offers when they're already motivated to buy? So what we were expecting to see is if you reduce the offer you give somebody, that yes, conversion rate will drop, but the margin that you make will be higher because you're not giving away as much of a discount. And what we found out was, the conversion rate dropped, but the margin didn't increase by as much as we thought, which was an interesting lesson to me, because basically what it told me was when people come to our site, when they're looking to buy, whether it's a dress shirt or a pair of pants, they kind of have in their mind how much they're willing to spend, and we can enable them to get more for that money, but really the decision to spend more is a difficult one to move. It's very inelastic, whereas the decision to buy or not buy is very elastic. So that's where we need to spend more of our time trying to convince people to buy. And as far as getting them to spend more, that's a bigger challenge. That seems to be more about, do they trust our brand? Do they trust our product? And so that's more about, over time, we hope to build that one. But on a single transaction, we just have to try and close the deal.
I'm just going to take a pause. Are there any questions in the audience so far? Questions so far? It's like, oh my God, it's the afternoon. We need a sugar. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Ownership of customer experience. So everybody says, we define what customer experience was, and we said it was important for the entire organization, for everybody, but somebody has to own it. So can you talk a little bit about, and again, your companies relatively size-wise are upstarts to a certain degree. Who owns it? So when a jet head there's a terrible experience with packaging or what have you, does that come to you as head of membership? When somebody from the registry has a terrible experience or a great experience, of course, happy customers tell 3 people, angry customers tell 3,000. Who's owning this, both the stream of communication and then the follow-through in terms of, yes, we can fix this, or maybe we can fix this, or you know what, guess what, we can't, we need to prioritize something else because we have this other stack of priorities in front of us. Anybody want to take that one, take that hot potato first in terms of customer experience ownership?
I think it depends for us. So the answer is, for us, it always gets prioritized, to part of your question, which is, does stuff fall by the wayside? For things related to our members, it always gets prioritized. And I think it depends on the center of gravity of the issue as to who might serve as the owner. So if it's something that's a day-to-day sort of typical interaction or something we might expect, right? Our jet head team owns it. They're highly capable, highly skilled, and they're, between the, all the jet heads, the supervisors there, and the head of the team, they, a lot of those issues, they take the lead on it and are quite skilled and capable of responding to. Some things that are wider scoped, hit more members, or just bigger profile for whatever reason, those may get escalated, and then depending on whether it's really a product-based issue, right? There's a bug on the site and people can't enter the promo code appropriately, right? That's something that our customer experience team, which is our product team, might take the lead on. If it's something broader, like a bunch of orders, got shipped incorrectly or canceled, or product, defects broadly, or whatever it might be, and we haven't had all of those issues, those might come to me. But we are quite cross-functional in how we handle them. I mean, we had something this morning, and I led a call. I mean, there were people from operations, from marketing, from customer service. We were all there on the phone, just talking through it. And I think in a nimble organization, you have to be, and you have to know like who the point person is on every team. And we sort of think about it like squads. We have a team that's the homepage squad. We have a team that, if we're focused on a particular, whether we're trying to improve conversion or whatever it is, we'll put a squad together. I think for a lot of these issues, launching a holiday strategy, we sort of put these nimble squads together to tackle issues. And I think companies, I think it's always important to have an owner, but I think when people come to the table and represent different pieces of the puzzle together, we tend to find it has really, really great and collaborative outcomes.
Laura, how about you?
So we do have one person who specifically does research. So between what she brings to the table and what the head of customer service team brings to the table, that tends to highlight all the issues. And then it's a divide and conquer. It depends on whose world it is. I actually think that what's more interesting, because Zola's 35 people, like I said, so we can all do it. I come from a big retail background, not new online. And what I find fascinating is that in these companies of 1,000 to 20,000 people, there's no customer experience team. And some of these retailers have come on harder times recently. And there's very little customer research done to determine how it could be turned around. And when there was research done, it was kept very close to the chest. Only a few people saw it, and it wasn't widely distributed. And I think that that's actually more interesting, because just as there's so many other ways that the older companies need to get with the times and be mobile first and all the other things that we've talked about here today, I think being transparent within the company and having that open dialogue with your customers is actually one of the biggest things that they need to change.
So you think, so it's interesting, so maybe your next job will be to take a private equity company and acquire some of these companies some of these retailers that are
Great idea, Eric.
in these backward times. Well, but why is that? So you have companies that have a storied legacy, a history,
right.
And there's this assumptive value of a relationship between the consumer and that brand, and yet they spend so little time on customer experience. Why? What happened? What's broken? What got lost along the way?
We were talking about that earlier while we were waiting, and I think that there can be a legacy, especially in a fashion brand, of the customer doesn't know what they want, I tell them what they want. And that's true in some respects, especially when it's like a trend. Like maybe people don't know that they want ponchos, but just wait till you see my poncho and then everyone's gonna want a poncho. Like, okay, I kind of get that. But there are so many, you should still know if your customer is asking for a poncho or not. And you should know what kind of poncho, if they had to have a poncho, they would want. And that kind of mindset, I think, just hasn't happened. And I think it's okay to have a very creative leader of a company, maybe who can just focus on their thing and they're just going to be about ponchos, but they better have a great right-hand man, whether it's COO or whoever, or girl, who is talking to the customer and keeping that creative dreamer honest to some degree.
So you said you have there at Jet, I believe at Jet, everybody has to go through customer service training.
No.
Or almost.
No, we don't. We want to get there. We will get there. Right now, customer services in Salt Lake, but we're working to implement programs to cycle people through. We're not at that point yet. But what we do, which is maybe what we talked about, is we do circulate all of the NPS results internally to everyone in the company, and we split them out by issue, and we make sure all the teams, whether it's pricing feedback or UX feedback or service experience or returns or whatever it is, we split all that out by issue and we share it with everybody. And that way, and it's not meant to be a judgment, it's not meant to point fingers, it's literally so that everyone has the information at their fingertips in order to be able to take those learnings and apply them into whatever piece of the puzzle they're building and working on. And I think that it's maybe that's why in companies that are, transparency for us is one of our core values and something that's very important. And maybe it's why we feel that the ownership over customer experience is so distributed, because the knowledge and the insights are so distributed, and everyone really does have the ability to take those learnings and apply them to what they're working on. And so that's been a really successful part of helping making sure everyone at the company feels like they have a pulse on what's happening with our members.
David, are you measuring NPS in terms of the customer experience?
Yeah, we are. It's a very helpful metric. Again, high correlation with customer lifetime value, so it's a very, very good predictor. And it's definitely something we look at, and the more qualitative feedback is really helpful too, both in terms of the stores. It's great feedback to go directly to the different locations to know how people are doing, but also for the rest of the company, and that very similar gets distributed pretty broadly.
Yeah.
So it sounds like large companies need to endeavor to embrace irrational transparency. Would be one thing that they could do. What?
I think also I think large companies tend to discount the one-on-one interaction. I think they would look at something like the NPS thing. We can't possibly read through all the feedback that our customers give us. It's not a scalable process, so we're not even going to try that. And even though a larger company, it would be daunting to do at all, there's still value in doing as much of that as possible. The one-on-one outreach to detractors that you're talking about, that stuff has a really big impact. And still, no matter, I think with just about every business, word of mouth is by far the best marketing channel that you can get. And so building those great stories, those great experiences is something that I think big companies tend to take for granted.
I think something that has been an important part of our history at Jet is bringing our customers and our members along in the story of building our company. So for those that were around before we launched and followed our insider program, we basically gave early access to the site to our biggest supporters. As folks referred people to join the wait list to Jet, we rewarded those folks by giving them early access into Jet, and part of that story was really building this beta community. And so we brought them along. We sent out newsletters saying, here are all the features and fixes we're working on. As soon as we get through these, we'll be one step closer to launch. And that was really an important part of our strategy. And so, bringing your consumers along, being open with your flaws, being open with the things that you're working on, I think is really it's really powerful, and it helps make sure your consumers are part of the building of your company and of your story.
That's amazing. So each of you are involved in different elements of retail, so to speak, retail subscription diversification model. I want to know what you're thinking about, what you're watching in terms of what's next on the customer experience frontier. So we hear wearables. I admit I'm a fashion victim there. Beacons, Internet of Things, mobile, social. There's so many different elements that can affect the customer experience, down to the watch on my wrist, down to, and I think one of Shar's colleagues talks about how Pandora for a period of time was quote unquote listening in on the human behavior using the accelerometer in an iPhone to figure out what songs were trending on the basis of the human interaction. So there are so many different elements, especially in biometrics, and I think Bonobos maybe more than others would appreciate that. What are you thinking about next? What's next on the customer experience frontier? Or either what you're excited about or what you're super terrified of?
Well, we're looking at, I've been keeping my eye on the beacon technology, especially as we're trying to figure out how to build the kind of hybrid offline-online model. And so beacons offer a lot of potential, that you can know who's coming into your stores and when, and kind of, again, the same way that we track users on a website, we might be able to understand what they're doing in a store. I don't think the technology is there yet. It seems like right now there's a lot of obstacles to it in terms of if people have it enabled on their phone, if they have the apps that actually allow that kind of tracking. And then the bigger concern, the scary thing about that one to me is that I think it crosses a little bit of a line. I think people are used to that behavior on a website, that you would come in and the people that we would know every page that you look at and every product that you look at. When it comes to a physical store, knowing where you are and what you're looking at, it kind of crosses the creep out line, and so that can be really dangerous. So I'm not sure how that turns into something that's really useful, and it's definitely not there yet, but the potential is interesting, so we're keeping an eye on it.
Laura?
So Zola is very, very mobile. We had an Apple Watch app the day that the Apple Watch came out, iPad, everything. And I think just watching the interaction between those things, because we see the behavior so different between watch and tablet and phone and site, and what people are doing and who's managing, who's adding, who's buying. So just really like keeping our eye on that to make sure that we've built out the features and functionality that customers need whatever screen they're on. And then obviously whatever comes next, Google Glass, what have you. But interestingly, one of the things that for us we need to watch is the move to offline. So like Bonobos, our customer does want to touch and feel the product. And so what we're trying to figure out is how much of an offline presence do we need to kind of complete that whole 360.
And the offline experience, right, because it's right, owning versus renting. So is it, it's the showrooming experience, right, that Amazon, or that you hear about for years in terms of the Amazon experience. I'll go somewhere else, and then I'll buy through you. Do you feel like that doesn't feel sufficient?
Well, it doesn't, and while you could get, like most brands, you just go into Bloomingdale's and look at them. Actually, Zola carries a lot of like niche, upcoming brands that are hard to find. And so to really highlight those brands and bring them to life, I think that offline experience is good, and just like the curation and making sure it's in our brand voice and what have you. I mean, shopping the Bloomingdale's home store is not an experience that we want to make our customers go through.
So a pop-up
Sorry
store,
if anyone here is from Bloomingdale's.
Pop-up store with Etsy somewhere in Chelsea would be great.
Something
Maybe.
like that.
Something like that. Something like that. Dana.
Yeah, I think for us at Jet, it's not so much about the what is the next technology and what is the next thing, right? I think for us it's about sort of taking our core values and our approach, and for all these areas in which we expand, making sure we do it in our sort of unique and ownable way, right? So thinking about, when, as we build, recommendation engine, right? Like what is the Jet way to do this? What is the way that's not, been done before 1,000 times, but what is something really unique? How do we show, if building smart carts is really unique for us, how do we show, carts when we recommend to people and not just products? How do we make sure that the recommendations are specific, to the categories that you're interested, not, versus just broadly across the site, or whether it's we think about our relationship with our retail partners, right? What are the different tools and technologies that we can build for them to make their experience better? Whether it's giving them more tools to be able to control whether it's prices or who's selling their products, or the experience that consumers have. What are those tools and technologies that we can build for them? So I don't know that there's one necessarily specific technology, but it's more to say for all of our stakeholders and all the things that we're building, let's do this the right way. Let's do this the way that makes the most sense for our platform, and for all of our stakeholders.
Okay, last question from me, and then I will turn it to the audience, and then everybody can stand up and take a breath, and then we'll have a little break, and then we'll have more conversations. Elephant in the room rhymes with Flamazon. Thinking about Amazon, we're going to hear about that next too in the conversation. In our next panel, next fireside chat, in fact, is all no, it's not dedicated to Amazon, but does anybody worry about Amazon? Do you care? Because Amazon, right? Like when an elephant sits, it hurts. So do you think about Amazon top of mind, middle of mind, back of mind, or it's just not? You're just focused on you do you.
Actually, very top of mind for us. One of the benefits that we have is that our site is very beautiful and customizable and personal, and you can add photos and messages. And the Amazon wedding registry, it looks like Amazon. And so a lot of people don't feel like that reflects their style, and so they don't want to go there even though they have basically everything. And we hear through the grapevine that Amazon's paying a lot of attention to our site, specifically how it looks. And so, yeah, if Amazon comes out and they basically rip off our design, it's going to be very hard to compete with that. And we're going to really need to step up our game even further. So we think about Amazon all the time.
David?
I think Amazon's different than us. They're really great at selling commodity products. We're a brand, we're a vertically integrated brand. So we're about building that brand awareness. I think they've struggled in the fashion world because it's a different problem than the other products that they deal with. Fashion is a very personal thing. It's something that you wear on your body. It's a reflection of your self-identity and your personal expression. And so it's a more difficult problem. The recommendations behind that kind of have to get more into the psychographics. They have to get more into kind of knowing who you are, which is something that Amazon isn't as interested in. So I'm not as worried about that.
I suppose you can make the argument that Amazon knows what books you buy. They know what music you read. They know what music you read, music you listen to. They know what movies you watch.
Right.
So they certainly seem to have a mountain of psychographic beyond standard data that whether they choose to apply it to this problem or not, I don't know. But it is a multi-billion-dollar category.
Right. Yeah, and so I think the advantage that we have is that, because we've designed our products, manufactured them, we have a better idea of what our products are and how they fit into that profile. Yeah, I agree. I think Amazon would know a lot more about customers. But the good news about the business that we're in is we can go and ask customers what they're like, what they want. And they're willing to give us that information because we're both working towards the same problem, which is helping someone find the right fashion, the right style. And so that works really well in our model. So, I think it's a different problem that we're trying to solve.
It also seems like Amazon's taken their foot off the gas on fashion. I mean, they came out so strong, spent a ton of money, and made no headway whatsoever.
Right.
And so I feel like they've kind of gone back in a corner and are reevaluating. So I feel like you have a lot of time before they.
Yeah, I don't think it's what they're best at. I think they know that. I mean, certainly if they put all of their time and attention behind it, then I would be worried about it. But I think they've got other problems. They got drones to worry about and things like that.
Totally.
So they'll keep busy for a while.
And Dana, the smart cart, one click, it's smart cart an ownable. Is it an ownable thing? Is it something that you think about Amazon about? I wonder if they're going to maybe experiment with this as well.
I think what we're building at Jet is really unique and really powerful customer experience, and we're laser focused on building something that works for our members and for our retail partners. And so we absolutely, I think we have, and I'm certainly biased, but I think we have an absolutely incredible team. We have an absolutely incredible group of investors. We have really clear vision, and we're all just focused on marching forward and building the best experience we can build. And so I'm thrilled to be a part of the team, and it's great. And I hope everyone here will give Jet a shot if you haven't already, and try us out.
Well, we're thrilled to have Jet as a customer of Sailthrough. So we have a few minutes left. There was a man in the back before who was chuckling. I don't know if he was actually going to ask a question. Questions from the audience for this panel that has, I can say it, although we'll be aging ourselves, decades of experience in thinking about customer experience, what makes customer experience work. Questions? Question?
What would you say is step one in terms of customer experience? And from the conversation, my takeaway would be product, and having product inform so many other things. So if that's not what you would say, I'd be very interested to hear.
I would say product.
I would say that, yeah, if you don't have a good product, there's really no point moving on to step two.
I guess I mean in terms of product, like a digital product and online, you have the products that you're selling, but it sounds like so much of what you're doing within your customer experience and figuring out about the life cycle has to do with the learnings that you're doing from your potential consumers. Is that really the crux of it, and then there's so much more you can do from there?
Yeah, when I say product, I mean the online experience, not the actual physical products.
You both. Yeah, I think when the online experience, I mean, I think maybe the one foundation that you need for that also is you need to have the infrastructure in place, the tracking, the instrumentation, the tracking, the ability to testing infrastructure, whatever that might be. Otherwise, the experience is what it is, and it's very difficult to figure out if it's working or not and how to improve it.
I don't know if I agree with that 100%. I think when you're first starting out and you have a product, you just need to talk to as many customers as you can, get feedback on prototypes, blah, 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 and launch. regardless of whether you have testing, because I think you can add the testing later. Just, you need product market fit before you need to start like optimizing.
Do you guys have any thoughts around the best way to bring data from the customer service team through the rest of the organization, and not just NPS, but sort of those kind of one-off conversations and the trends that a great customer service team can pull out from those one-to-one conversations? I think every time I talk to our team, I learn something new about our customer that I can apply directly to acquisition or activation. And I don't know as much about Zola's customer service team, but I know you guys both have fantastic teams that you put a lot of effort behind. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think for us, it's the combination of the quantitative and the qualitative that makes that whole process work, right? So we have disposition codes or wrap codes, at the end of customer service interactions, and we have visibility into what those are, and we can use those to figure out what topics are trending or what issues might be trending. But it's not perfect, right? You might see something like orders, right? You're like, unhelpful. Don't know what that means. And so we've done a combination of partnering with our customer service team, not only looking at what those disposition codes are telling us and being a part of the definition of them so that they can be helpful. That's one thing that we do. But also we do a weekly sync with customer service where marketing and customer service really sit down and they tell us what's happening on the front lines. They say, this promo code was the problem for XYZ reasons. This particular term and condition wasn't clear enough. Next time, needs to be clear. Cool, got it, right? Or, this was the feedback from, your television commercial, or this was the feedback, what have you. And so that enables us to identify things that are trending. We also use productivity tools internally. We're all on Slack. And that's actually been a really important tool for all of us to communicate with each other as well as with customer service. We have threads going all day, where stuff's happening in real time, and so we're able to respond really quickly. So I think it's a combination of just that quantitative, qualitative feedback loop and making sure there's internal tools to share feedback in real time so that everyone knows what's going on.
Awesome. Well, we could have more questions, but our time is done. So I would like to give a round of applause to our panelists. Thank you.